right, well,
production meeting. Talk
There we
about
go.
vinegar smell on shirt.
We're live.
I'm writing this down, Dan.
Yeah. Aaron and I are dressed similarly today.
What's up?
We got our candidates ready to go. How awesome is Greg Popovich? Remember when he was just an old curmudgeon like 2 years ago?
I would probably, without hesitation, vote for a Popovich Kerr ticket.
They might have won last year.
When you say something like that, you think to yourself, well, wait a second, hold on. These guys are basketball coaches. What do they know? But I feel like those two would actually do a good job.
Yeah, and plus it was like sort of a season of change. That was this whole thing that caused last year's election and all the weird stuff that happened. So why not change to these sweet cats? So anyway, Popovich Kerr. We got some hoop ball shirts on the way, don't we? I feel like that's something we should. Well, I feel like we should talk about that on the actual.
We're swimming in shirts, Dan.
Outstanding. So what's going on, man? I hear
they're really good quality too.
Go ahead.
Shout out to Adrian for putting that together. They're actually. I got the sample. You never know with shirts. Like, I got a lot of shirts that for Fun Shirt Friday. I got a lot of shirts for Christmas of varying qualities.
Nice.
And then one, my wife got me. She got me a Warriors shirt because before I was media, I was a Warriors fan. And I'm not. That's why I was asking you about the vinegar, because she's like, "Why does this shirt smell like vinegar?" And I was like, "You're just tripping." And then I smelt the shirts, and they did smell like vinegar. And I think it's the Warriors shirt.
Oh,
well, the two were kind of sitting on each other.
It smells fine.
I swear this Warriors shirt. It's first of all, it's got a sticker of the city that's like, it's way too big for the shirt. You can tell this thing was made for like 30 cents somewhere where there probably needs to be labor reform. And the circle, it was like they just like dipped this piece of plastic in some sort of glue and just like slapped it on a shirt. And I think that's the culprit.
Yeah.
But the hoop ball shirts are, I got them, and I think it's because Adrian's kind of in the industry, does some serious work for some well-known brands down south. From Huntington Beach, good old Huntington Beach, and where they take their t-shirt quality seriously. He really put together a good shirt. So like, I got the shirt. First of all, it's a medium. So I think he was sending me your shirt.
Yeah. No, I don't know.
In a medium these days. But my wife gets the shirt. She wanted one. And so we got it. It's a great quality shirt. So, if we start, giving these out, or I don't know, should we sell them, Dan?
Probably.
I don't know. I know we should give some out.
I feel like merchandise, don't they?
Am I leaving money on the table if we don't sell them?
I'm not saying you have to sell them for like an insane profit. I just think the more people you put in a hoop ball logo, the better. It's like walking branding right there.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So we went to this coffee shop the other day, and they're selling their shirts for like $19.99. And I was like, or maybe it was even $24. I don't know what it was. And it was like, who's going to buy this shirt for $19.99? And who cares if they do?
Someone will do it. I mean, I don't know what in fact, I think I saw the emails going back and forth, but I didn't read the details. So I don't know off the top of my head what cost is on this type of thing. But, even if you sold it right back to the community at cost and it was like a zero profit endeavor, let's get the Hoob out there. Let's get the logo on everybody.
The shipping is the expensive part.
Yeah, that's true. You could say we got a lot of people that listen in Australia. I looked at the listenership for Fantasy NBA Today. They've got a little world map thing, and you can hover over countries to see who's listening where. And it's the U.S., Canada, and Australia are just dominating listenership. And then there's like New Zealand is sort of up there in a decent chunk. I think there's a couple of Western Europe and like one South American country that had reasonable listenership. And then I was surprised to find that there was like 70 downloads in Russia over the last year or something funny like that. Like, it was just one guy.
Why does Russia make us laugh, Dan? I don't know. No, I like to see when it's like a Middle Eastern country or just somewhere that's, as far away from the United States as possible. I'd like to see when those countries pop up on reports because, it's like pretty random that we're worldwide. And when we really are, I kind of shake my head and wonder why people halfway across the globe are listening to us, but they are. And, we're thankful and grateful for that.
It's true. It's true. It's the magic of modern internet, really. That, like a
it's
tweet.
The magic of the Hoob.
Everybody. The magic
when
of
you really
Hoob.
think about it. But the shirts, I'm not kidding, man. I was really happy with the quality of the shirts. Like they're stretchy. It's a good fabric.
Nice.
I like a good shirt, man.
Bruski does like his shirt. I was
sorry. I'm just ridiculously out of it, and it is what it is.
I'm looking, I think, at the history. No, that's not right.
Are you looking at Russia out of your front door?
I'm trying to figure out how far back this thing is tracing, and I think it's tracing 2 months. So over 2 months of listenership, there have been 20 unique listeners in Russia. So we have 20
fans in Russia, not named Vladimir Putin.
Yeah. Not. I assume not. Maybe he is.
What?
I mean, I don't know.
If Vlad, if I could call him that, if Vlad was a big fantasy basketball guy, it wouldn't shock me. He's a big hockey player. Really loves that hockey.
There's a lot of stuff.
And Prokhorov, obviously bought a basketball team, but was a real big jet ski guy. He loved to get on a jet ski and just like do the same trick over and over again. He would pop up out of the water and then land, and then pop up out of the water and then land. What I'm saying is these oligarchs and Russian leaders have more than one interest. Sometimes it's basketball, and sometimes it's fantasy basketball.
I'm having a lot of fun just panning over countries to see who's listening to the show. I think on a future episode of this thing, I think we're gonna play what's the fewest. Oh, I found it. I found the fewest. We have one. Over the last 2 months, there is one listener. You want to take a wild stab at what nation that one listener was from?
I'm gonna go with.
I should give you a. Not really fair.
No, I mean, I'm not looking or anything, but I'm gonna go with Morocco.
It's not a bad guess. It is in Africa, and the answer is Kenya. We have one listener in Kenya. How about that? That's the lowest. Oddly enough, only 2 in India. I guess fantasy basketball isn't big there yet. That's a big market. Let's talk about some basketball, shall we? Now that we've talked about vinegar and
Kenya? Well, I'm all full of piss and vinegar, Dan. Let's. What do you want to do? You want to get the piss and vinegar stuff out of the way?
I don't even have the Suns on my list. So
not the Suns, man. It's the new target is Philly.
Sixers. I knew it was going to be the Sixers. All right, in 3, 2, 1. What's happening, everybody? Welcome to the official start of Fantasy NBA Today, live on Friday edition. I am Dan Besbris, the man taking a big swig of coffee, getting ready to talk about the 76ers is Aaron Bruski. We have matching T-shirts on Friday.
Did you call me before the show and ask me what I was wearing?
We didn't coordinate, although this is actually less embarrassing for me than last weekend when my wife's father came over to babysit while I took my wife out for her birthday, and he and I were basically wearing the exact same shirt. And then there was that Freudian moment for my wife where I think it kind of ruined the entire evening for her. But all, I mean, it was just like a striped button down, so it wasn't like we showed up in the same Popovich Kerr t-shirt. That would be That'd be a little bit weirder. Or he didn't like walk in a DuckTales tee. That would have been stranger. How you doing, bro? Good morning.
You're cracking me up, Dan. I need that because I need to wake up. It's a week 2 of the flu, and yeah, so that's all nice and fun. No, it's great, man. We're getting ready for the New Year's. I guess the second weekend of holiday extravaganza. You know, the holidays have been timed to where you had your Christmas holiday right over the course of a weekend and then landing on Monday. And we're going to get another 3-day weekend here with New Year's. And me and Dan, have been chatting big time about new stuff for hoop ball. Mm-hmm. And I can't wait to get to the other side of New Year's because I have already informed all of the people in my life that we are going on a heavy push, not just in-season fantasy stuff, but site development stuff and business development stuff, and I'm excited. So I'm really looking forward to the new year.
It's a funky time right now. Obviously, trying to get everything scheduled and sort of get to the end and get all of the players back and healthy. God. My Lord, this is brutal. All right, I'm going to start the show with my rant. Well, I guess we should say hello to everybody. Hello,
your rant, or I want to sponsor your rant, sir.
This rant sponsored by Aaron Bruski of hoop-ball.com. He's at Aaron Bruski on Twitter. I am at Dan Besbris. You know what I always forget to do on these Friday shows is if you guys are watching this thing either live or otherwise on YouTube, click that little thumbs up button. Give us a little, I guess I can do it in the camera, right? There's I have toe thumbs, by the way, so that looks really dumb when I do it. Bruski, you want to give a thumbs up so people can see what a real thumb looks like?
I don't think you want to do that, Dan. I got double jointed thumbs, so I can do that weird stuff.
Me too, actually. Look at that.
Oh, crap. We are sane.
We're meant to be. Give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you feel so inclined. That way you get a little marker when we post a show on YouTube. We've got free DFS shows going out these days by our boy Dan Durrett. We've got this Friday show. Of course, we've got the premium stuff. Those will not give you an alert unless you are a premium subscriber. I don't know if even then if it would do it, but we find a way to get that stuff to you. So give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I haven't reminded people enough of that. Follow us on Twitter at Hoopball Tweets as well. And now it's rant time, sponsored by Aaron Bruski. You know, they extended the NBA season by 2 weeks this year to try to prevent this. And we have it, and it feels like, and maybe it's just because I've been particularly strongly impacted by it, but I don't think it's just that. There have been and this is a medical term, a butt ton of injuries this year. And they're not just like guy misses one game. It's a lot of like 2 to 4, 3 to 6 week absences, and they're piling on top of one another. So I suggest the following, NBA. Forget this ridiculous 2 extra weeks crap. You just eliminated parts of the preseason, so it's not like it really changed what the players were doing. They just have to play harder at a slightly less frequent pace, and they don't have those sort of warm-up games. Go back to the old schedule. I don't care. Or leave it stretched out, whatever you so desire, and just put a week in right around now, like mid-December, where everybody just gets a week off. Fantasy writers.
Amen.
We can take a week off from podcasting. The players can just rest up a little bit. It's like the first All-Star break that's not an All-Star break. If you want to do something fun with your week off, I don't give a crap. Put it in there. But just give the guys a chance to get healthy, because I am getting swallowed. I thought I was getting Damian Lillard back last night. He didn't show up. I was hanging on as long as possible, and now I'm starting to watch myself slip in the standings. I was able to sort of mediate the damage because guys like Kent Bazemore and Serge Ibaka were having really big stretches. And these are like, the guys halfway down my roster that are not supposed to be carrying my team, but they did. But now those guys have cooled off a little bit, and Curry's still out, and Dame is still out, and Whiteside is just coming back, and Griffin's still out, and James Johnson is still out, and Lopez is out, and Levine still hasn't come back. And I'm getting crushed. So get your asses back in there. I'm dying over here.
Well, this week is traditionally. Why the hell do I hear that? My God. My God. All right.
What happened now?
I have an echo going on. I'm going to talk through this. I've done this in actually some radio hits where for whatever reason, their board had an echo. Is the hardest thing to deal with when you're on a radio hit, and I've done it for 15 minutes. And actually, if you talk through it, the echo goes away. All right, we're clear. Good. Perfect.
Oh, good. I was going to say strategy number 2 is take the earbuds out.
Oh, no. Let's not do that because I know how to figure that out. No, the echo is gone. The question I was going to ask you is, when do you put this break in? Because you got the All-Star break. That's kind of, except for the players in the All-Star proceedings, you have a week now for, I presume, that stayed the same for players to take that week off. I would think you'd have to put it in almost like right around Christmas time would be my guess. And that would work great. I think, if you put that, they'd have to almost like cancel the Christmas, or, well, I don't think you cancel the Christmas games. The league likes them too much, but like the 26th through the 1st would be a great time to do that. There's a lot of people that are, I don't think a lot of people want to go to New Year's Eve games. It's kind of a weird stretch. That would be a good spot for that break. But then there's a couple key questions. Is one, how many players get arrested during the first break or not arrested, but, maybe let's just take it down a notch and say they play their way, or pardon me, they eat their way out of shape because they're not with their teams, they're not working out, etc. But we'll even set that aside and talk about kind of the other aspects of this stretched out schedule that I've been reading about and wondering about. The one I was reading about is teams apparently have less time to practice. And I don't understand that, but I read that in Miami. Eric Spoelstra talked about it, that they have less time to practice. So I don't have a real good grasp on why that is. Maybe it has something to do with the league tried to remove back-to-back games. And so if you have a back-to-back game, sometimes you have a bigger gap between the next game. And so that might be the source of the not practicing issue. So that might be one reason that players are getting injured, is they're not doing enough practice, which I don't have enough expertise to know one way or another if that's actually true. The other thing is that teams have a little bit more incentive to rest guys now because there's more days off if you do sit a guy. So like a 3-game week that the Spurs had, if you're the Spurs, you can rest Kawhi Leonard in the middle of the week and buy yourself 3 days off, 4 days off, when you count up all the hours. So why not rest a guy? And so maybe that's why we're seeing a little bit more of this rest. But yeah, injuries, I think, and especially this time of year, teams, I think, with Christmas, with the New Year's Eve type of holiday situation where, there's a lot of travel involved. It is kind of a 1/3 mark of the season. I think teams are pretty liberal with their rest during this week, the week prior to Christmas. And, I said that to a few folks coming into the last half of December. And then teams really do, I think. It's kind of like real life. On January 1, teams and people get geared up for the year and get ready for that stretch run.
Yeah, the dog days, man. They got them. You got them in baseball. You got them in basketball. All right, your turn for a rant. I think I know what it's going to be. The city of brotherly love appears to be right in the crosshairs.
I'll keep it simple, Dan. The Sixers are stupid. Like, just dumb. I mean,
they lost
dumb.
a Lillardless Blazers team last night. That wasn't a particularly good loss.
They're 2-9 since the trade. I don't really know if the trade itself kind of like, I don't think anybody was sad that Jahlil Okafor left, but bringing in Trevor Booker, you got to wonder whenever a good player sits, how that sits with the other players. And speaking, of course, about Rashawn Holmes, you bring in Booker and, the Colangelos held on to that asset and Okafor forever, thinking that they could get more, and it just dragged out and it dragged out and it dragged out. And you got to wonder, are they influencing a decision to play Trevor Booker when Rashawn Holmes has just been everything that you could ask a player to be, especially in limited minutes? And, Booker's had some good moments, some bad moments, but I can't think of a time when you've got a good young prospect that, is really, really showing a lot on film and you bring in a veteran who's not appreciably better, and then you say, we're guaranteeing you a rotation slot. You know, you come into our team, you're not appreciably better, and you don't have the upside, and etc. And you don't, and this player gets, you know, this kind of pass that they've got the rotation slot and then the rookie's got to sit. You don't see that very often. And Colangelos have always been accused of kind of coaching from the management roles. You see Jared Bayless out there getting big minutes. He's been terrible this year. So you just, with that, you know, I'll just tie a bow on it and say the basketball gods don't favor stupid teams. They just don't. You know, that's a proven scientific fact.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't. And so if you're going to sit Rashawn Holmes and give him a bunch of DNP CDs after what he's put on film, like, I have no sympathy whatsoever for your 2-9 streak since the trade. Rant over.
Perfect. Let's get to Dan's list, although Philly was on the list, so you knocked one thing off of it. There are 11 remaining topics on Dan's list. No, we don't necessarily have to get to all of them, but I'm guessing they'll also bang out some of the questions that'll come in via the chat room. If you're watching this thing through like a little ported feed on Twitter or some other social media or whatever it is that maybe doesn't take you directly to the YouTube page, if you go to the YouTube link, there is a chat room, or there should be one, and you can actually participate in the show as well. So get on in there. There's already some 15 questions in the chat room, many of them coming before we even hit play on this bad boy. So come join us. I know there's a handful of you out there watching right now. If you're not in the chat room, you can also, I guess you don't have to. You can exist incognito. I don't mind. First thing we usually cover, and so I'm just going to go right back to it, are key injuries that have happened over the course of the last week, the folks that stand to benefit from them, and kind of what we can expect from those guys. And there were basically 4, as far as I could tell, with some smaller ones mixed in there. And the 4 injuries that we're starting to get an idea on are the Nick Vucevic absence in Orlando, the Reggie Jackson absence in Detroit, the Jeff Teague absence in Minnesota, and, you know, whether or not Victor Oladipo is going to be out for, you know, a couple of games. That one's the shorter term, presumably. I have a ton of detail on it, but it seems like that's the shorter term of the 4. Bismack Biyombo looked really good in his first 2 games starting for Orlando, and he's playing 30 minutes. Ish Smith looked pretty good. Tyus Jones looked pretty good. Lance Stevenson looked pretty good. Is this as easy as that, Brew? Is this one of those rare times where someone goes down and truly one guy steps in and takes their place?
Yeah, I was thinking about that earlier today because there's going to be some huge bids in some of my leagues for some of these guys, like Ish Smith. You know, he's a pretty easy to predict guy, top 75 in 8 cat leagues, top 150 in 9 cat leagues, maybe even a little bit better in 9 cat leagues. So, yeah, I mean, that's a huge bid in an 8 cat league. Because you're going to get a good 6 weeks out of that, maybe 8 weeks. And then, you know, on down the line, I don't think that the Victor Oladipo, Lance Stevenson situation is one that will have that big of a bid. When Lance is full strength, he's still a late round guy just because of stat set issues. So I know he had a big popcorn line in this last one, but that's not moving the needle. Our other guys there, who else we got? We got Nick Vucevic and Bismack Biyombo. Biyombo, you know, had that phenomena that we talked about when you are sure of a 30-minute role and, you know, you're kind of comfortable and the team needs you and you just have that freedom to just go do what you do, get stuff within the flow of the game. You know, stat sets kind of change. You know, he's been good on the glass. He had the 5-block game. You know, I think it's a win so far for owners that picked him up. He was actually cheap. I lost out in a couple circumstances. I was bidding on Jordan Bell, thought I had big enough bids, didn't get him, and then I got Biyombo for basically change in these real competitive leagues. So the market was soft on him. If you were able to pick him up so far, that's a win. And who was our 4th guy there? That was
Biz, Ish Smith, Tyus Jones was the 4th one that I don't think.
Oh, yeah. Tyus Jones with his 5 steals last night. He's a stat magnet. Love what he's doing. And, you know, with Teague, if I saw some tweets of yours, Dan, and I agreed with them. I thought it was about 2 to 3 weeks on that. Grade 1 MCL sprain can be up to 4 weeks. I've seen that. Typically, if it's going over 4 weeks, it's going into grade 2. Even with a surgery, with a minor scope, sometimes they can be 4 to 5 weeks, typically more like 6. So I think 2 to 3 is right there. Now, that means you can't make a huge bid on Tyus Jones because it's such a short-term thing. But he definitely needs to be owned. He could be a top 50 guy, for 3 weeks. It wouldn't shock me. I think it's probably a safer bet that he's top 75 to 100, but he's shown some real stat potential in the past. So yeah, it's been a clean cut week for injuries. And keep in mind too, if you are in a bidding situation, that first bid is going to take somebody's big bid on another guy off the table. So you might layer your bids in a way to where you don't spend quite as much as you think you might spend if you were bidding on each of them individually straight up.
Explain what you meant by that, because that's something that could go over people's heads a little bit.
Well, it kind of went over my own head. No, the way this works is so like, if you, let's just use all 4 of those or 3 of those guys. If you're bidding on 3 of them, and I don't know, in your 12-team league, you got 10 active owners and, varying bidding strategies within those 10 guys. And let's just say that there's 5 of you that are truly competing for players A, B, and C. The winner for player A might not put in another big bid for player B because they don't want to spend so much money in 1 week. There are reasons why they might not want to think that way, or they shouldn't think that way. But most times owners will think that way. And it also, sometimes you don't have a need for a second player. So you might not bid as much for that reason. So when you're making your bids, you might decide which ones you like and then layer those bids accordingly. If they were all in a vacuum, say 200 out of 1,000 fab dollars in your mind, you might take them and order them and go 200, 150, and 100 for those guys, knowing you got a good shot at getting the second and the third at a value instead of paying full price or bidding full price on all 3. So it's a little bit of bidding strategy in a league where free agent pickups occur once per week. It's called a FAB league, free agent acquisition budget league. And if you, it's a great way to play. I love that. That's my favorite way to play because I think it adds a lot of strategy to pickups in the middle of the season. And so if you do play in those leagues, a little bit of strategy happens on the bids.
Well, we mentioned briefly the Victor Oladipo thing in Indiana. I feel like, and I've talked about it a decent amount earlier this week, but of course a different audience today with the live YouTube show. Thad Young going through a little bit of a slump right now, and I don't think it's a coincidence that it occurred right after the report that he was playing through a sword. It does seem to run almost in exact parallel to when he appeared to be playing through a sore wrist last year. And suddenly his shot attempts per game went from like 11 down to about 6. My only thought on that is guys have slumps. It's 1 week. Everything's going to be okay. We knew he wasn't going to be a top 40 guy the entire year. He's also not going to be like a top 150 guy the entire year. It's going to be somewhere in between. Yes, I've already ranted enough about the fact that there were blurbs out there talking about how he's a potential drop candidate. He's not. Everybody just relax. Yeah, I already called out names on a previous show, so I'm gonna let that one slide a little bit. But it was a bad blurb. It was not our site. And they were like, well, if he has one more bad games, maybe you can cut this guy. I'm like, really? He's a top 50 guy so far this year. I hope I'm in your league, sir. Because I will use whatever my fab budget is to get someone who's playing that well. So just everybody chill on that front. Everything's going to be fine.
Maintain proper levels of thatitude.
Yeah, maintain your thatitude and maintain your Nika love too. We knew he was going to have an off game at some point. It happens. These guys are not superstars. Superstars don't have off games. Mid-tier guys do. Speaking of mid-tier guys, and that's basically where the rest of this show is going to go, Frank Ntilikina and Jarrett Jack both played 30 minutes in the Knicks' last game. What's going on there?
I'm glad you brought that one up because I feel like there should be more attention on this. It's the actual pivot point of Frank Ntilikina's fantasy utility. Hang on one second. Flu game here. Frank has 30 minutes, pretty much for the last few games. And the numbers haven't been there, but they were in the last one. He had, I believe, 10 assists in the last one and a pretty solid line. You might have started him if you had stashed him and he was, you're in a 14-team league with 4 games this last week. You might have started him thinking, God, you know what, if he just has one good game, he could probably be a good low-end option for me, especially if your team's suffering from injuries and things like that. He is not getting any love on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, he's kind of getting his stuff where he can. They're not letting him run the offense. Jarrett Jack is playing next to him. But he's got too much upside, I think, for owners to pass up. And so pretty soon Jarrett Jack is going to have to give way to Frank Ntilikina. And I just think that when that happens, he does enough of the things that we need with the steals and the threes. But then the assists and the boards are also there. So even if he doesn't truly click as a leader of that offense, or maybe it doesn't happen fast enough, there's enough of a foundation there to be a late round value. Now, if he clicks or Jack gets hurt or anybody gets hurt, really, because they're so thin in New York, and he actually starts taking more shots and being more of a focus within that offense, now you're looking at a guy who checks a lot of boxes and would then have mid-round upside. So I think that Ntilikina needs to be owned in all 12-team leagues.
Interesting. Are you at all concerned that if or when Tim Hardaway Jr. comes back, this whole Ntilikina, Jarrett Jack 2-point guard thing, does Frank get pushed to the side when they have someone else out there that can be a ball handler?
There's a lot of Knicks fans out there that are not big fans of what Jeff Hornacek is doing. I think that could be a concern, but I do think it will help that team as a whole. They lack so much on offense right now, relying on just kind of, great games from Enes Kanter, great games from Michael Beasley, knowing that he's going to disappear in the next one out. You got guys like Kyle Quinn, who are kind of almost offensive players, but they're not really. Courtney Lee, sort of miscast as a lead-ish sort of scorer. Kristaps is great, obviously, but, he misses games. Jack is not looking to score at all whatsoever when he's out there. So they're just, yes, if he comes back, things might get a little tight if Hornacek isn't cooperating. But at some point in time, it's going to be pretty hard for Hornacek to keep Frank from playing because I don't think these Knicks are really long for the playoffs. And Jack, for everything that he does well, there's enough media in New York that understand basketball to see, like, okay, this guy can't hang on defense. Okay, he's making mistakes at key times. He's quite literally just a crutch for Hornacek because Hornacek's not ready to trust the rookie completely yet. He's trusting him quite a bit by giving him so many minutes and playing them together. But that final layer of trust that really gets him going, it's not quite there. I'm gonna bet that he pushes through a Tim Hardaway return.
Interesting. I have I have some weird names on this list. These guys that work their way on here. It's been a strange week. Trey Lyles that's on my list because somehow this dude is he's knocking down buckets at a pretty ridiculous clip. He doesn't do a whole lot else, but he's been doing enough in that one department that's basically turned him into a value. Although he did have 10 rebounds his last time out. Is Trey Lyles that's taking Paul Millsap's spot for the next 2 months?
I'm wanting to do a project on stat set changes that really don't fit what we see. 99% of the time, stat sets stay in the same ballpark. Trey Lyles has not really changed his stat set, but he's been better in a lot of different rebounding. He's not complete zeros in the steals and blocks categories. There's just been a little bit more there. And it's been sustained. It's been about 2 weeks now. I don't think he's changing his stat set, but I'm just kind of, with a lot of these players that are getting thrust into these bigger roles, Biombo was one we talked about earlier. I wonder if there's some sort of a research project there. They obviously traded, to get him, and they gave up a good amount to get him. So I think Denver would love to see Trey Lyles be good. I think they're not long for Kenneth Faried. I think Wilson Chandler's an injury waiting to happen. Chandler's been better over the last week and a half. So that doesn't make this kind of like this gaping hole for Trey Lyles to run through, because, if Chandler's on his game, then Lyles really only has like one more leg that can be chopped out from underneath him before he becomes somebody to drop. I'm not buying the Trey Lyles, renaissance, if you will. I think that there's too many things that can go wrong, namely starting with the stat set, even though that it's improving. At the end of the tunnel, you've got Paul Millsap returning at some point, and any sort of crowding of the rotation. Gary Harris has been playing mostly hurt. Emmanuel Mudiay hasn't been on the floor very much for this team. I think that when you start to get all these guys coming back, Trey Lyles can get squeezed pretty quickly here. Is he worth owning? Yes, he's worth owning, especially while he's hot right now. I think he's probably got about 2 more weeks of providing, say, top 100 to 150 value, and then it's back to the old Trey Lyles, which is, we'll give him a round of applause for showing it back up on the radar. He looked like he might have been dead to rights, but he's had a good couple weeks. So tip of the hat to Trey Lyles.
A tip of the cap to young Trey. Here's a couple of Kings and Kings adjacent questions. Bogdan had a solid game, but it's sort of a mixed bag with him lately. It's been kind of, here's a good one, here's a clunker, here's an okay one, here's a clunker. The non-scoring, non-3-point stats have at times been a little bit lacking until that most recent game where he had 4 steals, a block, 8 assists, 3 3-pointers. He knocked down all. It was one of those games where everybody started to pay attention. The rotations in Sacramento are I'm gonna say fairly unpredictable. It's about the simplest way I could put that. It's very difficult to predict who's coming on at any given moment. And then the other Kings adjacent thought, I just wanted your thoughts on Rajon Rondo posting a 25 assist game. That was interesting.
How many buckets did he pass up to get that number? I don't know. By all accounts, he had one of those great games. Assists, talking with Kaz on the show the other day, we've basically said that assists are the most pointless stat in basketball. You toss the ball to somebody who, hucks up a shot that, prayer, and it goes in, and, hey, you got an assist. No, we'll talk about Rondo, I guess. With Rondo, he's a must-own player in 8 cat leagues, and in 9 cat leagues, he might flirt with, the drop line at some point, but he's a pretty stable fantasy asset. And I guess we can just leave that at that. As far as the Bogdan situation goes, I think you can't count on anything in Sacramento because Dave Yeager has his idea of what motivates a player to be good. And that's going to include a lot of withholding minutes. And there are a ton of coaches before him that have had this philosophy that you use minutes as currency with players, and that's how you get the best out of them. We've had this conversation in a million places. There's different philosophies to that. If you use the minutes as currency to get what you want, you have to really live with the consequences of how you're doing that. So with Bogdan, he's not getting full minutes because he hasn't earned them in Dave Yeager's mind. Part of the reason why he hasn't earned them in Dave Yeager's mind is because he doesn't have enough minutes to give out. And because he's giving them to other veteran players, and it's not even really at his position. It's at other positions where if you were going to accommodate for many shooting guards that you have, or guards in general that you have on a team, you have to play small and you have to get minutes that way. But he's not doing that because Vince Carter's got to get minutes. Zach Randolph's got to get big minutes. And sort of, Kosta Koufos has got to get big minutes and so on down the line. So you get situations where Bogdan Bogdanovic is clearly a top player for the Kings. He might be their best player. He hasn't even really felt the outer boundaries of his game yet either. So his development has been slowed by this process. And but he's been phenomenal. Like he's a mini CJ McCollum. That's something we've been consistent about here. We've been consistent with the idea that he deserves 30 minutes per game. And now you're seeing it play out. So the talent is there. I do think that they're going to be more encouraging of playing Bogdan big minutes because he was a big piece of the trade for Marquise Chris, who's coming into town. And, the Kings and Suns are going to lock up. So that'll be great for my Twitter feed. But you trade away essentially Marquise Chris to get Scal, Bogdan, and basically, those are your two guys that are really making that trade look good for the Kings. Bogdan, Scal is so far in the doghouse that it'll be a while before he gets out. Bogdan, though, is playing well and can be kind of a spotlight to say, hey, we did a good thing here. So I do think they'll play him more. He's a late round value right now in 25 minutes per game. He's a must-own player in my book. He's going to only get better from here, only get more responsibility from here. He's going to step into that responsibility just fine. It could be some slow moments, just like Buddy Hield right now is having a slow moment. But like Bogdan, both are must-own. Both are going to be better in, say, 4 weeks than they are right now. And they could really close. They play well together. And if this Kings team, actually sits veterans and focuses on development in a professional, correct way, you got some good combinations here where like Bogey and Hield and Willie Cauley-Stein, they all play well together. So those three players in particular could all kind of join up as top 75, top 50 assets as you go down the stretch. It's feasible that in like March, we might look at the Kings and say, hey, Jaeger's not, he's not such a bad fantasy coach after all. And he's actually settling on a rotation.
It's conceivable. Probable.
Please don't record that and play that back for me in March.
Probable, I don't know, but conceivable, yes. Blake Griffin might play tonight. How about that? That was, that was surprising even for me because there was this, end of January thing. Maybe they rest him for the rest of the year. And then we heard 2 weeks, and then we heard 1 week, and then we heard 2 days. And now he's officially a game time call. And I feel pretty smart about picking him up and using all of my waiver priority on that one. Because I figured, the West, you've got all these teams sort of bunched near the end of the playoffs, and the Clippers are kind of an angry organization where they feel like they've been disrespected with Chris Paul leaving town. Everybody's like, oh, they're going to be garbage now. And so
they're angry with a Steve Ballmer twist, though.
Yeah. Yeah. So what can we expect from Blake? I am assuming, and you can feel free to correct me on this. It'll probably take, I would assume, about a week for him to get back up to even close to kind of normal speed off a knee thing. This is not something where you drop him in and he plays 35 minutes.
This is all bad for me. Like, I look at this and there's too many red flags. First of all, looking at the Clippers and then the 9 teams ahead of them in the West, I don't think that the Clippers are really in the class of those 8 to 9 teams or 9 teams. So that worries me from the perspective of, okay, well, even if you do get Blake Griffin back, like, you're going to have a hard time competing against these 8 to 9 teams or 9 teams. I don't know why I keep splitting them up, but you have a hard time competing against them. And so when do you fall out of the playoff race? So that's my first thought. And once they fall out of the playoff race, now you're talking about getting rid of DeAndre Jordan. You're talking about, shutting guys down, especially if you've got a big old contract like Blake Griffin does. Why burn him out this year if everything's going to go to hell anyway? So those are my thoughts there. The other red flag is,
you got to remember though, and I'm just going to jump in before red flag number 2. You got to remember that these organizations are stupid, right? Like, and I'm not saying that like the people running the Clippers are stupid. I'm talking about NBA in general. Sports in general is stupid. They will play these guys until literally they are mathematically eliminated, even when you know there's no chance, right? Like they could be.
You know what though, with Griffin's contract being so massive, like that. Okay, you're right. A lot of teams are stupid. A lot of stupid stuff's been done, and it makes a lot of sense what your point is. But in this situation, I don't know. Ballmer has done some crazy ass shit in his day, but he kind of, it seems like he kind of gets it in certain respects. Like I feel like he might be oversold as the crazy guy, and that contract is huge, and Ballmer is going to be involved in that decision because this is a franchise level decision, face of the franchise level decision. And I mean, if it would be malpractice to put Blake Griffin out there, having him grind if he's anywhere close to possibly being hurt, and the Clippers have no chance. So with all of that in mind, my second red flag is he's coming back a little bit early, and it screams to me, we got to make our push now. Like if I'm Blake Griffin, I'm like, I don't want to be a part of a rebuild. You know, whatever that rebuild might look like, they might end up, you know, being able to bring in some big names because it's LA, it's Ballmer. You know, playing next to Blake Griffin, probably a neutral thing for many high-end free agents. But the end takeaway here is I feel like he is seeing this thing slip away, and he's like, I don't want to lose my best friend to a trade. We have to be in the playoffs in order for me to keep my nucleus in order, and that means potential for injury. He's going to be what we predicted he would be, which is a top 75 asset. You know, maybe even a little bit better. Say top 50, top 30, even if he gets hot. With all that, I mean, he's definitely a must-own player. And for those of you that picked him up like Dan did, that's a huge pickup because
that's crazy.
Maybe this lasts for a month. Maybe it lasts for 2 months. Maybe it lasts the rest of the season. Who knows? Those are my red flags. I would take your Griffin asset after he puts up like 3 huge lines. I would sell hard.
Yeah. Oh, I completely agree on that one. I don't even really need this particular stats he brings. I figured that was like just a piece of gold sitting on the side of the highway, and I thought, oh well, I guess I could find a place for you in my piggy bank. Let's see what happens here. And then
I said it exactly like that, didn't you?
I did say, oh, interesting. And I had like second waiver priority, and I thought, I got a shot. There's one team that could do something here and mess me up. Maybe they're just not paying attention on this one. So, you know,
folded in your burlap sack, and then there's like run away like a leprechaun.
You know what I actually thought about doing in that moment when I saw Blake Griffin had been dropped? I thought about doing like 4 pickups and drops of completely random useless players to see if I could push him off the first page, see if nobody would notice that he was out there. I didn't do it. Ultimately, I just, you know, threw my hat up in the air.
That would be greedy.
That would have been a sleazy move. I don't play like that. Miami injury update is the last thing on my list before we take some questions from the chat room. Dion Waiters, I believe his last report was that he hopes to be back in about 2 weeks. Hassan Whiteside is working his way back. Meanwhile, Kelly Olynyk had probably his best game of the year in Hassan Whiteside's first game back. James Johnson is close, but not that close. He participated in parts of Thursday's practice, was the last thing we heard on that front. Goran Dragic seemingly playing through injury. He was out there for their last game. Meanwhile, guys like Wayne Ellington have gotten hot. Tyler Johnson has seen an opening. Josh Richardson has seen an opening. All the thinning we've talked about, Brew, has taken place, and guys are kind of stepping into stuff. My question for you isn't whether or not these guys can keep it going while people are hurt. My question for you is, can any of these guys keep it going after some of these guys come back, or is it going to go back to sort of too many bodies, not enough space?
Well, I mean, look, the Heat are 7-3 since the thinning started. happening. And so I will give us a hat tip for predicting that the Heat just need a little addition by subtraction there. Question is going to be, what have they learned in this process? It feels like they have learned a few things. They've learned that Bam Adebayo can play, that he needs to play. I think they've learned that Kelly Olynyk needs to play power forward. I think that they've learned that Hassan Whiteside might need to be in a 25-minute role to free up minutes for other bigs and to keep Hassan Whiteside healthy. I think that they have learned that Wayne Ellington needs to be a part of the rotation. I think that they've learned that Justice Winslow might need to earn his minutes when he gets healthy again. And that might have been him getting Wally pipped against himself, really. And I think that on down the line, Tyler Johnson's going to have a hard time surviving. Richardson has enough upside where I think owners need to hold there. And if everything clicks, it's possible that Richardson returns to maybe a form of 2 years ago when he was the big hoop ball pickup that pushed teams to the fantasy playoffs and through them. I think Olynyk's going to survive this. I think Adebayo is going to survive this. But let's say I'm wrong, then you're going to see problems up and down the rotation. You see Kelly Olynyk struggle, you see Adebayo struggle. You're going to see James Johnson struggle because the team will struggle. So there is a little bit of risk here if I'm wrong about what they've learned. I just feel like there's enough evidence here that this team, they'll start playing James Johnson at the 3, I think, a little bit. And that's going to be the big story in Miami. But the one thing that gives me hope here is that they've won during this stretch. So the kind of the shackles of preseason preseason judgments made by the Heat and what they were trying to accomplish and keeping everybody happy. I think that they probably realized that Justice Winslow might just be a bad fit for this particular team because he's crowding out the minutes. He's not bringing enough on offense. It's bogging them down in a few different ways. You need the creativity that Kelly Olynyk brings out there. You need the creativity that Adebayo brings out there. There's a lot of people in Miami that think that Heat team might survive just fine if Whiteside wasn't playing. And I think that they're better with Whiteside, but when that kind of sentiment exists around the team, I think that leads to those 3 guys. They even got a name for it. I think it's like 3 for tall is the new name floating around the Miami media. It feels like they got this. If they got this, everybody's going to be great. Like all of them all the way down the line. But Bam Adebayo is somebody that owners should be adding right now, even though he might be getting dropped because of the Hassan Whiteside return. I feel like his stat set has the type of upside that was Whiteside had a couple years back, minus the free throw shooting issues being quite as bad. So I'm thrilled with the Heat situation right now.
Let's move on, take some questions from the chat room. We are 45 minutes in on the show. My topics did take up a lot of time. Sorry, everybody, but hopefully I hit some of your questions. So we are going straight to chat room lightning round. Luckily,
what's up, Connor?
Luckily, there aren't a ton of questions. Connor actually was, he's back now, but he was out of town last week. He was taking care of his pa, who had a hip replacement. So hopefully the recovery on that went well. But Connor has returned, and he has sent me the list of the questions from the chat room. I'm going to go straight to that. Willie Hernan Gomez is on the list. Gorgie Jang is on the list. Let me make sure that these things syncing up in the exact way that I was looking for. You know what? It's possible that he may have actually hopped in and missed the first 2 questions. So I'm going to go back and ask those. John Rock says, what do we know about Gorgie Jang these days?
I'm glad you asked. Gorgie Jang is dead to me. No, it's not Jang's fault. It's but I think that we are now, if we're talking Jang's value, the only thing that's going to unlock him is an injury to Taj Gibson. And whatever you want to say about that, I think, you could argue that Jang has declined. You could argue that, Tibbs has killed him. I think it's the latter, not the former. But in a bottom line analysis, he's done. He's El Finito. It sucks because this was like a layup. It was a gimme, and then it wasn't. So there you go.
Rank the following point guards. 8 or 9, Cat. You can choose whichever one you like. Tyus Jones, Ish Smith, and Ricky Rubio. 2 of our injury pickups and 1 guy who's been a underperformer this year.
Gonna go Rubio, Ish, and then Tyus Jones. And this is, Rubio's kind of head and shoulders above the other 2. Talking duration here, Rubio should have his value for the rest of the season, and it should be higher than Ish Smith in the short term as well. And in 9, Cat, it's not even close.
Apologies, I did not mean to jump in. What are your thoughts on selling Rudy Gobert and has a couple of games of mild health? Is this just, is he going to be a guy who's injured? It's basically a sell low, but could you get out from under that, or do you just stick with it and hope things get better?
I think when he returns, if he posts, the first 2 good games in that mix, I think you could probably get some good value there. And you have to almost ask yourself, is the preseason valuation, is it what was it everything that it was supposed to be? And I'm just going to take a quick update here and just double check with my own eyes to see where he's been at. And it's not good. And it's I think people think he's still a second rounder, and it's been rough for him, and there's a lot of risk there. So yeah, I think if you could get a top 40 top 40 player, yeah, absolutely, make that deal, get out from underneath the risk. If he beats it, goes back to second round value, hey, you know what, you tip your cap to him and move on. But that's I think you're right on track there with the Gobert strategy.
That was a question from Alexander P. Jim Collins says, hey. Beasley says, hey. Ray J says, is Willie Hernan Gomez worth a stash yet, with word that Kylo Quinn is on the trade block? My opinion.
Is that the Ray J?
We saw you in a video, Ray J. I don't know. To me, that's a little bit premature, but what do you think?
I think it is. I think that there's something going on with Hernan Gomez. If he can't play, more than he has, maybe he showed up more out of shape than a lot of us think he was. But that said, we got to see a little bit more before we call him a stash.
This question actually came from 2 different people, Zubin and Ray J. Is Jason Kidd the worst coach in the NBA?
He got some heat on Twitter last night. I'll talk about while I try to figure out who the worst coach in the NBA is. He got some heat for the video where he got asked why he didn't play Brogdon, and he said that he looked, and the first player that he saw was God, I can't remember his name. He doesn't play that much. Who he play for is getting the best of me right now.
Well, let's see. They played Sterling Brown 7 minutes.
It was Sterling. Thank you. You used his first name. Then saw Sterling and decided he was going to basically get the job done. And he looked really serious when he said that. Like, he just looked at the bench and saw Sterling, so Sterling went in. And I think it speaks to the style of coaching that he has, and it's very non-conventional. And that would explain the changing rotations. Is he doesn't put a lot of stock in optimizing rotations, if I had to guess. And so he kind of looks at it as this kind of blanket topic where it's like, all my guys are good to go. And you know what? Hey, you get in the game. And that's not great. I think you expect more out of your coach to say, look, you got Malcolm Brogdon here. He's, taking a hit from the trade. His numbers are down. NBA players do care about their numbers. He's hit a lot of big shots for you. He deserves the minutes. He deserves the production. And yeah, maybe he doesn't care. And Giannis defended Kid after the game, and maybe they all don't care. But, Brogdon's your best player in that situation. And then he ends up, basically bringing them back. And it makes you wonder, like, are you maximizing your output at every turn? Are you maybe not a details person? Are you, where are you at in coaching? And, when you bring on a player that's, so young as a coach, he's just in the NBA doing, crazy, coach-like moves, for the Dallas Mavericks, drawing fouls against opposing coaches. He's a clever basketball player, but, it doesn't always translate to coaching. And I think there's a lot of frustrated people in Milwaukee. Now, is he the worst?
The other candidates coming from the chat room, by the way, we have some other candidates being lobbed at us by the Hoopball fan base here. Dave Yeager has a couple of votes. Michael Malone last year, the 2016-17 Michael.
To get off Malone, I swear that's if the Denver media didn't bring up, if the Denver Pete D'Alessandro media didn't bring up a lot of stuff, he would get way less heat. I cannot do the Malone stuff.
Well,
go on.
This was a vote for Malone last year, not this year, mostly because of not playing Nikola Jokic for a month and a half. Tom Thibodeau got a vote in the chat room as well for attempting to kill NBA players by putting them in the hamster wheel. I think those are all the ones that have popped up in the chat room. Earl Watson already got fired, so nobody got a vote. Hurl did not get a vote. I would have thrown him in there had he not. I don't know. I think that's a pretty good list to pick from.
I don't think it's Yeager. Yeager's stubborn, and there's a conversation about whether he should be developing a development team. But he's a really good coach. As far as coaching goes, he's a really good coach. But I might lean towards Hornacek right now. Hornacek looks pretty weak. Gentry has a good kind of foundation, but he's definitely, his job's in jeopardy. He's shaky. Triano, I don't know that Triano is kind of that's like a coach organization issue.
Yeah, and
there was something with they're gonna let Devin Booker pick their players. What?
An all-star team. I can't put Triano on the list because he's an interim head coach. So I give him an automatic pass because it's just like, hey, you coach this mess. And he's like, all right, whatever.
I think coaches have kind of some of the bad coaches in the NBA have been weeded out in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think that's well, Scotty Brooks still has a job.
Brooks has improved. You improve at anything you do for a long time. He has improved. He's not making quite as many what the hell are you doing decisions.
That's a good one. It's a good non-fantasy question. I like this one. It got us thinking a little bit. Any speculation on where Kyle O'Quinn may end up if he does get moved?
Man, I would like to see him go to a contender. Just because he does so many little things. Cleveland would be great. I don't know, if it would work. I haven't looked into it.
Is there any place where he could have fantasy value?
You're counting on the Knicks to do something smart, or not weird even. That's.
So no.
Yeah, if you're a rebuilding team, do you want Kyle O'Quinn? Probably not. But
doesn't fit.
Actually, maybe that's why it would work, because the Knicks would mess it up somehow. I don't know.
By the way, there are two.
No, I don't think so. No.
Yeah, that's what I figured. 2 requests to buy Hoopball shirts came in the chat room. That was, I assume, during our conversation from earlier. Not on the recorded podcast. You missed out on our shirt discussion and how Bruski's shirts smell like vinegar. We got a question about how many listeners there are in the Philippines. I will check that out later. I closed the window, unfortunately.
A lot. We got a big contingent in the Philippines, and it's great. And if you've not read this book, it's called Pacific Rims, and it's about all the basketball that goes on in the Philippines and why it's such a big deal over there. So naturally, I think it's our 3rd or 4th biggest market.
I believe it. We have a Hoopball pro from the Philippines who's very, very good at what he does.
The great Eric Ong. He has a name, Dan. He has.
I wanted to let everybody sort of simmer on that one for a second, see if they could figure it out. Let's see. So a couple of shirt requests. Should I drop Marcin Gortat for Dwayne Dedmon, or are they basically the same player? That's a good question. Basically are, aren't they?
I wonder if Marchand had, stocked up his driver's car with 3 or 4 women over the last week.
Yeah, you need Los Angeles Martian.
I'm not the Wizards schedule is not coming direct to mind, but Christmas break, who knows? It's weird. He just goes through these slumps, and then he's gonna crank out like a 14 and 11 with 3 blocks and a couple steals, and you'll be like, I forgot about that time that Marchand got me 2 rebounds and 3 points and nothing else, or whatever he did this week. I got him in a couple places. I'm not dropping him, and I wouldn't drop him for Dedmon just because Dedmon is probably a top 90 guy. And then you have to wonder, what are they going to do with John Collins, who's a very similar player? Playing the two of them together, it seems like they might actually pair them, kind of split their minutes up a little bit. You got Urson there, you got Plumlee. I just think that I don't see the upside for Dedmon, and I think that Gortat can be a top 75 guy for you, and they need him in Washington. So you know what, Gortat, give me Gortat. Damn it,
Miloš versus Rajon Rondo, rest of season 9 cat.
Miloš is not getting the 3 money counters, the steals and the threes that we wanted him to get. He's getting closer to 2.
Guillermo. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. That's it. So that's the problem with him right now. I think he can possibly survive with Blake Griffin, and it might even help him to have Blake Griffin around. That offense is so weird right now. You can't have Lou Williams and Austin Rivers chucking up shots and have other people also be healthy.
Yeah, there's gonna be a dent in there. Guillermo says, I'm stashing both Rashawn Holmes and Marquise Chris for their upside. But what if Taj Gibson gets hurt? Should I drop one of those 2 guys and pick up Gorgui Dieng?
Yeah, if Taj Gibson gets hurt, it's a race to the wire. Like, Gorgui Dieng will play 25 minutes at a minimum, and he will be worth, and his game will unlock as well. Taj has moved Gorgui out to like no man's land in every offensive set, and even defensively, it's like Gorgie's like, oh, I better not piss off Tibbs by stealing a Taj Gibson rebound. Better not go get that block because Tibbs might yell at me. It's exactly the vibe you get watching it. So yeah, no, you want to pick him up the minute that Taj Gibson gets hurt.
Mr. Gunn on Twitter, one of our followers here at Hoopball, tweeted at us last night to let us know that when Tyus Jones's finger was dislocated, he was actually getting yelled at by Tom Thibodeau while it was being popped back into place.
I saw that. I didn't have time to switch over, but I really wanted to because
that's hilarious.
Tibbs is a character, man. I'm glad. I love the NBA.
He's out of his freaking gourd. When should we think about picking up Jabari Parker? By the way, my thought on this is for a guy with that level of upside, you look to hold a guy like that for about a month, and that would probably beat the other people in your league to him.
Yeah, this is from the same team, the Bucks. Chris Middleton. There's not a lot of reporting out of Milwaukee, but I was able to kind of get a thread on it, and I felt like I was maybe 3 to 4 weeks away from active Chris Middleton.
And you want to do it before a big piece of news breaks too, because when
absolutely,
that happens, then everybody
if it's quiet out and you feel like it's 3 to 4 weeks out, or less, if it's quiet, that's when you want to make the move, because once the news hits, the person that is staring at the wire is going to get them, or your fab bid is going to have to be so big that it's fine. I mean, if you get them, you get them, but to get them for $1, which I got Chris Middleton for in quite a few places, that was great.
Wow. That's nuts. Does Nerlens Noel have any fantasy value later this year on the chance he gets traded?
I thought I saw an Eddie Sefko tweet or report that was like just one of those like Chris Farley in Wayne's World moments where that information was extremely detailed and unnecessary, whatever that line was. Yeah, that movie was on the other day. Cassandra, wow.
Yeah. Tia Carrere.
Yes, she can sing. Now I've lost my train of thought. The news was that they wanted to see if Noel could play with Dennis Smith Jr. And there was the thumb injury that has kind of just clouded everything, because it felt like what Eddie Sefko, who's kind of close to the team, said was there's going to be a tryout between sometime now and maybe the trade deadline. But I'm thinking in January, where Noel and Smith are given a chance as a combo to see if maybe they can get a pick and roll game going, see if, adding a rim runner to the equation unlocks certain things for Smith. Now the hip injury for Smith, maybe put that on ice. Maybe Smith got injured and they said, hey, Nerlens, do whatever you got to do to get the thumb healthy. And when you guys get back, we'll see if this works. This is all speculation, but I don't think that there's a stash here. I just think that maybe if we get a report that's like, hey, yeah, Nerlens Noel's going to step back into the rotation, maybe you then take a little bit of a gamble. Because if he works, I mean, the stat set is what it is. He could go up to, say, top 75 pretty quickly. So I would key in on that first report.
We are officially over the 1 hour mark on the recorded pod. So now we're very much in the final moments of the show. We're going to knock out these last 1, 2, 3, 4 posts, and then we're signing off. Is now a time to start targeting teams with better playoff schedules?
Yes.
Batum or Torian Prince, 9-cat rest of season?
Prince.
Let's see, a couple of trades that popped up here. This one's a tough one. David, can you take that one over to the Hoopball forum? That's the one thing I'm going to do on this one. It's a fairly specific question. Go to hoop-ball.com, click on the forums tab. I'll make sure that bad boy gets answered in due time. And then I think the last one, that I think might have been the last one. Oh, the last thing was about listenership again. I said I was going to look up listenership in the Philippines, and I did pull up that number, and you are correct, Bruski. It is number 4 among all listenerships in the world, behind the U.S., Canada, and Australia, and ahead of the United Kingdom. So yes, very big in the Philippines. You want to guess? This will be the fun way to sign off here. You want to try to guess the rest of the top 10, Brew?
Okay, we'll go United States. I'll go Australia, I gave you the top 4. Over Canada. Canada at 3. Philippines at 4. We'll go Brazil at 5. We'll go England at 6. We'll go no. Germany's going to be in there above somebody, and then we'll do Netherlands at 7, which maybe is 8. We'll do then we'll go Argentina at 9, and then let's cap it off with Spain at 10.
Well, you got the UK. That was the only other one that made the list.
Anything but the UK?
The other 5 were New Zealand, Singapore, Taiwan, Thailand, and Israel, the top 10. This is just for listenership. So interesting note on that one. Connor asked a question about how personal teams are doing right now. We will hit that up on the next edition of Fantasy NBA Today Live. I can tell you right now, my team.
Why the next edition, Dan? What do you got to leave or something?
Everybody knows how my teams are doing. They're doing great, except that I'm falling way behind in games played.
Yeah, I'm sitting. I'm waiting for the hammer. Like, all my teams are fairly healthy, with the exception of one very important league to me. But like, in that league, I'm just waiting. Like, they're just sitting there. They've got multiple top 15 players like ready to rock. Steph Curry, Kawhi Leonard. It's like all of them. I got Isaiah Thomas and a couple of them. I'm ready to surge for the second half of the year, and they're healthy right now. So I'm pretty optimistic about all of my teams, which that's a good place to be.
I need these guys to get their little tushies back in the lineup. The Steph Curry, Damian Lillard, Hassan Whiteside trio being out for one team is just, and there's 3 other guys hurt on that team, but to lose those 3 guys, 3 top 20 guys,
Well, and
including
all of our teams have Nico, which I mean, that looks like a possible top 50 guy. I haven't enjoyed any of the benefits of Rashawn Holmes in any of the teams. At some point, I mean, that's a add drop discussion that you got to have with yourself. But if he can somehow step into value, that's another top 40 guy that's just kind of sitting there. But yeah, no, outside of that, I am very happy right now with my teams.
I'm stressed out.
I'm stressed. Don't get me wrong. I'm not gonna sit here and be like, oh yeah, it's like a lock on any of them. But no, I feel good. I feel good.
I need dudes to play. That's all. He is Aaron Bruski. I am Dan Besbris. This is Fantasy NBA Today live with Fun Shirt Kerr Popovich 2020.
Save us. Save us, man. Save us.
It's not so much Fun Shirt Friday. Yeah, come on. Save us. Obi-Wan.
The Spurs get stuck for a couple years. We will all be cool with it. And the Warriors, too.
Yeah, they'll be fine. They'll just throw in some assistant coach, and they'll do whatever Luke Walton did up there. They'll be totally fine. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Happy New Year. We'll have
stay safe. Get a damn Uber, people. If I hear about any of you not getting an Uber,
my God, please be safe.
Trouble.
The roads
Get an Uber.
Bad. The roads are bad on New Year's Eve.
A lift. Get a lift.
Yeah, don't they have less weird stuff going on at Lyft than Uber? But just whatever you do, make it a safe one. That's the important thing. He's Aaron. I'm Dan. We'll talk to you in 2018.